years ago, I don't know. But I do know from the elders, way, way back, they used wooden things and birch bark for it to go. And everlasting knowledge never quits. Never. And I talked to the man from Michigan sitting over here, Mike. Mike's got a wonderful, wonderful computer mind. And I said, Mike, I talked to 2 or 3 people trying to figure out, before the white man with their iron kettle, what did they use? Well, let me think and let me look it up too. But he thought of them and looked it up. Yeah, he said, they made a hardwood tree hollowed out like a canoe. And they would put, once through the birch bark inside out, it was brought down so much, but not in a candy-like way yet. They would put it in that dugout canoe-like thing, and they would put a little bit of water and hot, red-hot rocks from the fire that made it go down to the sugar, to a candy type of thing, and then they would put it in what design they wanted it in birch bark. That is called a Anishinaabe, which is a tough word. That's what they call that. Oh, they did it. Hot water put in the hot coals. It rendered it down to that. And then they put it in the birch bark inside out. And I was told by a man, I hope he would have been here tonight, Eric Carlson. He says, I haven't done it, Billy, but on birch bark, it can go up to 500 degrees the water that you can try to put, but it's got to be full. So I don't know how it could do so much on the maple sugar. But anyway, those hot stones are put in that wigwasamakuk. Again, to get it down further, then they had what's called a butagan. They take a tree like a water drum, which is why I brought this. Like this, they hollowed it out, they put hot water, and then they would put stones as they had boiled it down the most, and that would bring it. I don't know the right word, how to say it in English or any language, but down so that it could be put into a candy-like thing or something. And that was from a hardwood tree, butagan. And that's down to a cooking level. They put hot rocks in there. They did that. They also made cornmeal in the areas where they had corn. And they made that in that butagan the same way, cornmeal. The mortar and pestle. Okay, Charlie. Now this is what they use for medicines, but much bigger. They used much bigger in these. They used for that maple sugar and cornmeal. The Iowa State University of Iowa has the seeds to the corn from everywhere almost. I don't know if they have Grand Portages. They have Leech Lakes, Red Lakes, Blacks of their corn. Did we have corn? I don't know. We probably did. Do we have it today? Yes, some grow it. But we also have 3 foods on one thing called the cattail. Just before spring is the root. Then, towards about 1/3 of the summer, is the lower part of the stalk. Mr. Blackwell, knowing these things, I walked right in the water and tried all that. Then they said take the brown off in August, and that's the corn. Not very good. But that is how it looks. I tried it. Didn't taste too good. Who knew all of these things? Let me see now. We got a few here. Who of you know in the last flood, Nanabuju, Wainabuju called different, none could go down. The beaver, the turtle, the otter, none could get the old earth to get part of it. Who did he have in his canoe? Who went down and got that old earth? The muskrat. Washushk, the muskrat. He looked for days. Couldn't find. Found it dead almost, floating in the water. The way the elders say, opened all. The legs, the hands, and there was earth. He blew on it. The muskrat came back to life, was almost dead. The muskrat. And then later he put it on the turtle's back, earth. How to move it? He put a wolf. The wolf moves it. They said when there's no more wolf, the earth will not move. These are the old things that I'm sharing with you. All of these things. Another treat that we got is the berries. A lot of you like to pick berries. Blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, gooseberries, blackberries, not here. Now I learned, so I made one. You take the bark off cedar tree waist high. You pound it to the ground, 4 of them. Over it you put a potato sack. Just a sack. And the elders told me about it, so like everyone, well, I'll try it. Charlie probably remembers some of that stuff, or it was the way before. But anyway, I take a canoe paddle, and I knock that, which turns it over, till it dries it. You can use blueberries, any kind like that. Juneberries, Saskatoon Juneberries. You then tie up that. It cannot spoil. That is how the old people did that. Now I'm going to try to start going a little faster, but there's so much I could try to teach you here. Now, before the white man came with their nets, the Anishinaabe had 2 different ways. Charlie, you take this around. There is a man, Leon Boise Vallier, from Lac de Flambeau. He and the elders produced a story to all the kids in school. In the migration, they came from Madeline Island to the south. There are 300 lakes on the reservation. On an island, they saw a light burning at night. It was a man spear fishing with birch. That's why it's called waswaganing. So Mr. Vallier and them now are teaching every bit of this stuff to the kids. They have 300 lakes on the reservation. They have a certain tree in the winter through the ice. They spear. That's their bait that's being passed around. They may have made those for hundreds of years. Those fish. Now the white man had a net with a float and iron that made it go down. While one old man in Cha-Cha-Bani, Inger at Leech Lake, I said, "What's that?" "Oh," he said to me in Indian, "that's my fish net." "Oh, why don't you get one with the thing on it then?" "Oh, this is my own. I like to use my own sometimes." "Oh, what's that on top?" "Dried cedar." "That floats it?" "What's on the bottom?" "Oh, that's a rock. A rock that we do some stuff on to pound on there. He said, well, what do you use for the net? He said, the inner bark of the basswood. Very thin. In Grand Portage, if they did, probably the spruce root. He said, but sometimes years ago, if they weren't caught good, we would have to, in the nighttime, wait for it, run out and spear it or get it. So that is what they did. In the springtime, that is the only time really that the Anishinaabe and the bear, a certain fish would get in the creeks and the rivers by the hundreds. The sucker. And at that time, the meat is still good. They would cut off the heads and boil it. I used to hear the elders, oh, I love to eat the sucker heads. Or they would fry some only in the early spring. That's when the bear would go get it. In the winter time, Old Man Winter brings his white blanket to snow. But he's always afraid of that beautiful, beautiful maiden. She's called Seguin. She dresses all in green. He leaves. He says, Seguin is coming. He comes back. He says, no, I'm going to put down a smaller blanket. She comes again in the south wind. Finally, she comes in her beauty and he leaves. Who is Seguin? Spring is a female. Seguin is the lady of spring. And I know some people whose daughters were born in the spring. Their name is Seguin. They'd say, Billy, here's Seguin. Oh, you were born in the spring. So now you know these things. They ate everything on the fish. They would catch, spear, they would net, do many different ways. They would eat the eyes, and even on the sides, some of those big things, whatever they're called. Yeah, I don't know what they're called.
Cheeks.
Huh?
Cheeks. Cheeks.
And those are good. And they would do that. One I wrote down, and there was just one or two elders left who knew this. Jesse James, from the fishing people here, the Spries, and one, Dick. And anyway, in that, on the lake trout, it's called the stocking. They would make that with potatoes and onions, and that was a special. They would sometimes put popple underneath, and they would put fish, scaled and back split, so it is over. They would put they would do clothes years ago, and they would hang them over popple, coals, and coming up smoking it. Then that would not, it would be smoked and it could not be ruined. That's how they did a lot of that. One way of smoking years ago. And she did that a lot. Ona Raincloud Kingbird of Red Lake. And I have a picture of myself learning that. Down at the lake, I smoked my own. Trying that. So there's so much different things. The berries they did that with. They did all of this stuff. Now, I'll try to get going here. There's so much I've been telling you, but there's so much knowledge in this world. Through adoption, Walter Caribou, my father, lived on a Basswood Lake. And one spring, his dad and his uncle went to the other side of Basswood Lake. And they came back. And they told the kids to jump in the canoe. They threw a blanket over them. And he said they told him not to look, but Walter peeped out. And he saw and he heard his parents and his uncle talking. In the wintertime, these people had gone Wendigo con, and ate 8 of their kids. He saw them behind a tree. He said they'd eaten off part of all their hair, part of themselves. And he said, my dad shot him with the gun. He says, by the way, I got the gun here, Billy. He showed me the old gun. He said, they threw him into the fire, and out came He screamed and out came ice in his chest. He had gone Windigo Con. And there's a whole story behind that. But one time they killed a deer. They were going to north of Fort Francis. The women worked all day of pounding, drying the deer meat. They used fat for lard. They would bury it or different things, but this was fresh. And they saw a boat coming. And it was a game warden. They were way off the reservation. And it was a game warden. He said, "Oh, it's Walter and the Giesiks." "Oh, hi," he said. And he left. The women had worked all day. If they got there, "Well, we'll cook up the deer. We had pounded to a powder with that. We'll cook it." "Where's the bag?" It was gone. His brother-in-law was so scared he threw it into the water. And the women had worked and worked and worked. And they were so mad at him. So that is how they kept their food long ago. Andre Lagarde of Grand Portage. One night Andre had a dream. And he dreamt Mudai. On the moose it's called the bell. Under them here? He dreamt two hanging from a popple tree. He went hunting the next day. He saw two moose by a popple tree. He shot and killed them both. He hung up the Mudai with tobacco. He would make a great jerky from that he had learned, that the Indians did years ago. They took the nose, they singed all the hair off and boiled it. I didn't like that. They ate the tongue, they cut it up, the heart is so good. Of the fish, the eel, the mizai, the lawyer, that is so good. It is like lobster. That's a clan here of the people. Herring, they backsplit it, soaked it in salt. Two ladies killed a bear here, Mrs. Spruce and Mrs. Tamarack, when it was in the den with an axe. They had a funeral for it later. And then they used that. How they would smoke that meat and do other things. Mushkin, also from Fond du Lac with an axe, did one. They would then do a funeral for it. The Moose Clan. 30 years ago, a girl said to me, "I'm Moose Clan, I can't eat moose." I said, "Oh?" So I went to Lac La Prairie once and I asked one of the old otter tails, "When in the way get to them? Moose, what's your clan? Moose." I said, "You can eat moose meat, can't you?" "Moose?" He said, "Yeah, but there's one part we can't." I didn't ask him what it was. But see, so there's all of these old type of rules. But they ate bear. They ate all these different animals. Now, Charlie, I don't know if anybody knows what this is. Huh?
Timsala.
What is it?
Timsala.
Is that what they call it? Okay, wild turnip. It's wild turnip. Now, Sam Gurno, who's listening to this from Florida, Sam gave me one. He paid a lot for it to the Sisseton Sioux. He's Ojibwe and Sioux. Boise Valier from Fond du Lac, he gave me one. That's where they're keeping and teaching their kids so much of their ways. All of these things. That has so much power to it. I don't know how long they keep it, but that is what the bear traveled all the way from Michigan, Wisconsin to Minnesota to get that. That's how powerful that wild turnip is. Matushamin or Makushamin, I can't remember its Indian name. But they ate porcupine, beaver tail, beaver meat, take the fat out, raccoon, 7 parts of the turtle, muskrat, big squirrels, all of these things that they ate. So I've been going so long, that's about 3/4 done, but I'm going to stop. And maybe I'll do it another time because there's so much history. But I want to end with one story here tonight. Then they can ask questions because I've got so much more. But one time a man was a young boy was put in Tower, Minnesota in an Indian school, and he just couldn't take it. So he took a little knife and matches, and he pocket knife, and he took off to get the Lac LaCroix, to Chihuahua. And he was so scared, and he'd wake up, he was only 7, 8 years old. He'd wake up in the morning, he'd had a little bit of the fire, maybe left coals, and there was deer meat there. And so he put it on a stick, made the fire bigger, ate some of it, took some of it. He kept hearing something ahead. He'd follow that sound. Next morning he woke up, there's deer meat. It's happened for 5 nights. Finally one morning he got up. There's deer meat. He started cooking it, looked around, he turned and there was a man sitting by the fire. He said, "Oh, bonjour. When in the way again? Who are you? Ante Wanjayan, Ante Wanjubayan, where are you from?" "Oh, I'm Bebama Juaib, who travels and sits on the hill." "Oh, I didn't know you people lived out here." He said, "Yes," he said, "I've been giving you deer meat every morning to help you." "Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'll come visit you sometime." He said, "Oh, okay." And he said, "All you have to do is go a little bit further." He said, "and you will come to where you're going, Kichiwani Lac LaCroix." "Oh, well, how can I thank you?" "Well," he said, "you could give me meat sometime. I live up by that hill," he said, "but always give me tobacco." And he looked at the noise ahead and he turned around, and it was a wolf. It was a wolf there. And his Indian name was Bebama Juaib. He named himself after. And he lived to be in his 90s. He lived in Grand Portage. He lived in Chippewa City. He lived in Net Lake. He was in the old folks' home and cook. He was always eating all the meat he could eat. He was like that, but he made it through all of those years. That was Ed Burnside. He at Gunfoot Lake worked for the Kerfoots. He was a guide. He was all over. And the elders always talk about the story of how he was helped. So Miigwech, I want to thank you, and I'll try to answer any questions. Maybe we'll have to have another one because I've got at least 4 more pages to go through. But I'm trying to pass this on. Some of these stories. The Atasokan and the stories of how these people survived through the years. So Miigwech, and if there's any questions from you, or I don't know if she can see if they're coming through on this machine here, I don't know. But any questions anybody has?
So if you have questions, go ahead.
Or if any of these people.
Well, I'm sorry, what was that last thing that you passed around there?
Garlic or turnip.
Those are wild turnip,
Wild turnip?
Matushka cement, and that is what Sam Gurnall, Boise Valley, oh, I forgot, Mike Fairbanks, the chairman of White Earth. He has some, and they are trying to bring back a lot of their own plants and foods and things, and that's what they are getting the tobacco and the wild turnip and how to fix it. And in the first few days, it is just so powerful and fantastic. Wild turnip.
What is that kind of like a normal turnip